Hello and welcome to Taiwan Talks. I'm Inka Vat. Days after Lai Ching-te called on China to cease military intimidation of Taiwan, Beijing held 2 days of joint force drills dubbed Joint Sword-2024A. The exercises around Taiwan were designed to test whether the PLA could seize power and control key parts of the island democracy. And for the first time, coordinated Coast Guard drills around 4 outlying islands, including Kinmen and Matsu. Taiwan said it all served to highlight China's bullying, hegemonic actions, and its non-peaceful intentions. Joining us to discuss this are Chen Ming-chi, Institute for National Defense and Security Research, Guermantes Lailari, retired U.S. Air Force Foreign Area Officer specializing in counterterrorism, irregular warfare and missile defense, and Marcin Jezewski, European Values Center for Security Policy, Taiwan Office Head. A very warm welcome to you all on the show today.
Thank you.
Guermantes, let's start with you first. So 111 aircraft, 63 Navy and Coast Guard vessels. How does these drills, how does it compare to the ones following Nancy Pelosi's visit in 2022 and also Tsai Ing-wen's visit to California in 2023?
So these exercises have several purposes. The first purpose is to train and exercise the PLA military and the Coast Guard. The second is to conduct psychological warfare against the population of Taiwan and around the countries in the area. And the third is obviously to message the United States that it's they're trying to message it that it's incompetent or unable to stop them because they have a destiny. But these actions are also calibrated to see when the Taiwan or the rest of the world reacts. So the first one, when Pelosi, after Pelosi's visit, the PLA used actual missiles to fly over Taiwan and flew into not only Taiwan's EEZ but also Japan's EEZ. And also the exercise area included the Philippine EEZ. So that really activated everybody. It was the missiles that really disturbed people. All the other stuff was less important. And consequently, Japan is now planning on doubling its budget in 5 years. Taiwan has increased its conscription from 4 months to a year. Philippines is engaged. So that was a major mistake on the PLA's part, is using missiles. So the second exercise, in April of 2023, they didn't use the missiles, and also in this exercise, they didn't use the missiles. So they learned that lesson. But they're constantly trying to push also and see if there's any pushback. So in the case of this exercise, they came very close to Taiwan, especially on the eastern side. They came within the 24-mile limit of the contiguous zone. And also, they also exercised close to the Philippine islands within their EEZ. So the messaging is continuing to be there about we can do it, you can't do anything about it, and this time also in May this month they use like as you mentioned a lot of Coast Guard vessels. So we have to remember that the Coast Guard vessels have they've been using them a lot in the Philippines, West Philippine Sea. They've been practicing how to blockade an island or an area. And so now these same ships that have been practicing this are now deployed around Taiwan.
So you're talking about Second Thomas Shoal?
Yes, Second Thomas Shoal, but also all the other harassment that's been going on against not only the Philippines, but U.S. and allied airplanes and ships where they constantly, so these ships are practicing their activity. And just a final point is what's also sometimes not mentioned is the fact that there are always 4 Coast Guard vessels around Taiwan all the time. So this shows that they've greatly expanded the Coast Guard role in this exercise.
Professor Chen, so we heard there about the Coast Guards, how there's a much greater presence in these exercises compared to the other 2 that we've spoken about. For you, what was the difference? Is there some kind of development in what the PLA is testing?
Well, certainly. This is smaller in scale, but the Coast Guard is relatively new. Why Coast Guard? Because it's a symbol of sovereignty. I mean, China has declared the 10-9. The 10th-9 is in the east, not far away from Taiwan's east coast. So that is means that they are doing the law enforcement activity within their own territory, as they claim. So one element of this exercise is about lawfare. They have boosted that lawfare with some declaration of that Taiwan Strait belong to China. It's China's internal water, and they are going to use action to bolster their announcement, their word. So I think this is something that the world have to be very aware of.
Martine, on that point about lawfare, and also, both guests have talked about the propaganda element of this. Let's take a look at what China has said. It said that Lai is a dangerous separatist. Recently, Wang Wenbin of the Foreign Ministry said that separatist forces will have their heads bashed bloody. The language is quite violent there. So this idea of punishment, does that legitimize this show of military aggression?
I do not believe so, and as you rightly point out, the rhetoric coming out of Beijing is indeed very bloody, and we see it at different levels, not only among the top elites in Beijing, but for example, during the drills, the People's Liberation Army Eastern Command has been very active on their social media channels, and specifically Weibo, where the narrative was directed at both domestic Chinese audience and also Taiwanese audience, reminding those who might sympathize with the DPP, or as China would describe them, dangerous separatists, that weapons aimed at killing Taiwanese independence are already well positioned. So I think that this only underscores the importance of psychological warfare as an element of response to the inauguration of a DPP president. I think that it's irrelevant whether it's Lai Ching-te at the helm of a DPP presidency or any other politician who might have won a nomination from the Democratic Progressive Party, because the DPP rejects the notion of the 1992 consensus, which was coined neither in 1992 nor is it fully a consensus. Then China rejects the idea of looking at DPP as a reliable interlocutor.
But it's ironic, isn't it? Where is the danger coming from, clearly, when we see these drills?
Well, China is changing the status quo. It's not Taiwan that's doing anything. Taiwan is just existing. And so the danger is from China. And what they're doing is, by bringing their ships and their aircraft closer to Taiwan, it creates higher risk for Taiwan and for China, for that matter, because now you have basically 1 minute to react to a fighter jet that's close to your coast, and the jet could fly into Taiwan, or it could send a missile to Taiwan, and the reaction time is now half the time that what it was before in the midline. So this strategy they're doing is, commonly called the anaconda strategy. Trying to squeeze Taiwan, literally reducing the space that the ROC military can respond to an aggressive act by China, and also increases the risk of a miscalculation by China in doing something where they might cross a point where they're going to get shot down. And so this kind of activity creates much higher risk, and then China could use that as an excuse. You shot one of our planes down, so we're going to attack you, and do something more aggressive. They created the situation that causes more risk.
Right. Professor Chen, Beijing says that it's as a result of, or in response to, Lai's speech, Lai's inauguration. Are there any signs that the exercises could have been planned well before the speech?
Certainly. I mean, with this kind of exercise, you have to join the Coast Guard, Navy, Air Force, and as they claim, including the Rocket Force. Certainly, they will be planned ahead. So it's not really a reaction to inaugural speech. Actually, in the inaugural speech, President Lai Ching-te sent some goodwill, mentioned about the tourist visit and also the exchange student program. I think that is a very friendly gesture to olive branch to China. Unfortunately, that China chose to ignore and go ahead with their military actions. I think that doesn't set a good tone for the rest of the 4 years. if there is their strategy. And also, I will have to point out that actually counterproductive to China. Xi Jinping once again with the the DPP government in the minority, they try to win the hearts and minds of Taiwanese people. I don't think this exercise will contribute to winning the heart and minds of Taiwanese people. On the contrary, it alienates Taiwanese people and make Taiwanese people more determined and more firm to protect our own democracy and the freedom.
I want to talk about what the critics say. So the critics say that the, perhaps the speech didn't need to be so provocative in talking about the ROC's sovereignty. There is the argument amongst these critics that perhaps Taiwan shouldn't, in their words, poke the bear or poke the dragon, especially when it's not militarily ready. What do you say to that?
I believe that by frequently mentioning Republic of China and Republic of China Taiwan, newly inaugurated President Lai was actually building a sense of harmony. And I think that we should look at the choices of his references to the country where he took over presidency as an internal message more than something that was projected at the People's Republic of China. Some of the principal political fault lines are defined by identity and people's connection to either Taiwanese nationalism or Chinese nationalism. I think that Lai was sending a message that he is going to be a president of all people on Taiwan. And therefore, I would not read it as poking the dragon. Rather, I would see it as a way to reconcile the often difficult identity-focused dynamics within the salad bowl that Taiwan really is.
Okay. Guermantes, I want to now turn to the Chinese Defense Ministry's description of these drills, which mentioned integrated operations inside and outside the island chain. What did you make of that? Are we simply, is it a sort of PR term for the west of Taiwan versus the east of Taiwan? When we say inside and outside the island chain, what do we mean?
Well, as was mentioned before, this was the first time that really we saw activity around the outer islands with the Coast Guard activity, and also you had jet fighters loaded with weapons, you had ships loaded with weapons. So they were basically covering all the territory of Taiwan.
Guermantes, we've got a map to show. So the joint Sword-2024A operated across 9 different zones around Taiwan's mainland and in the Taiwan Strait. Take a look. There's 5 zones surrounding Taiwan, including the north, east, southeast, southwest, and 1 in Taiwan Strait. And for the first time, there were also 4 zones around Kinmen and Matsu, Wuchao, and Dongying.
This is the first time that those islands have been included in any exercise. The other part of it was the joint part. When we say joint, we not only mean the Navy, the Air Force, and the rocket forces, but we also now see the Coast Guard. And we can see perhaps other elements. For example, the missiles that are pointed at Taiwan, they moved in China, and they moved perhaps to their locations where they would shoot. They didn't obviously shoot, but the idea is that they're trying to integrate a larger and larger number of forces and trying to get the joint operation down so they don't they work harmoniously as opposed to potentially fratricide or not achieving their objectives. So the joint part is something that they're very weak at, and they have to practice this a lot.
Okay, and what do you think the CCP gained other than, as you said, this sort of the joint operations? What else did they gain from it?
They were able to get a lot of intelligence. In other words, the response by Taiwan, its military personnel, its readiness, and in the case of Taiwan, the HF-3s came out of their storage, the anti-ship missiles, the domestic production. So these are all things that not only do they do, but they also watch what their so-called adversary is doing, so they can collect intelligence and figure out what they would need to do in the next time or in an actual operation. Also, I think it sends a message to other countries in the region of the idea that if China wants to do a blockade against Taiwan, that will affect their economy, their shipping through the Taiwan Strait. So the Coast Guard especially would be doing the boarding of ships, stopping them and checking them. So for example, if Japan decided to join with the US to help Taiwan, that means that the Coast Guard, the Chinese Coast Guard, could potentially prevent shipping from Japan going either north or south in the Taiwan Strait. So all these things are not just in the military sphere, it's also in the economic sphere, and as you said, the legal sphere, and many other dimensions.
So the point is that the CCP might be gaining from this exercise, but so is everybody else.
Correct.
Professor Chen, in your view, was Joint Sword-2024A, was it a test of whether the PLA could, successfully undertake a blockade of Taiwan?
Well, it's far away from a blockade. It requires many more ships in the air. I don't think by this 40-something ship they will be able to achieve that. And secondly, blockade is according to international law, is between country and country. So by announcing a blockade, there will be indirectly admit Taiwan is an independent country, which is something I don't believe that Xi Jinping will happy to do so. Vaguely publishing the area, it seems like a blockade. But as I mentioned, that is more about psychological operation than the real blockade of things. And they even do they're trying to do the stop and the inspection. I think that could happen in the future, but again, that depends upon how we react, how Taiwan react to the whole situation. So I think it's not a preparation for a blockade, but rather it's going to achieve a fait accompli, so that they will have a very regular activity in this area. So it's about inside of the island chain and outside the island chain. Let's not forget, Xi Jinping's ambition is to project its military force outside of this first island chain. And by putting his assets constantly there, he will be probably can claim victory over U.S. supremacy here. So I think this is the intention for them to have this exercise.
Okay. Marcin, what do you think is the likelihood? Analysts disagree on whether the PLA China would go ahead with a blockade. Many argue that this would be counterproductive because it simply gives time to Taiwan's friends to come to its aid. What's your view?
I think that the PLA might not be ready to execute a blockade just yet, but we looked at the map that shows 5 zones where the exercises were carried out, and the one zone that I believe merits our further attention is the eastern zone. So for the first time, when we compare these exercises to those held in 2022 and 2023, the eastern zone got that close to the city of Hualien that is where one of the major international ports in Taiwan is located, even if it's quite minor in international standards. And I think that this also provided the PLA with an opportunity to test its ability to block the route leading to a port that is significant for 3 reasons. Firstly, it is an important port of entry for energy supplies, and Taiwan remains highly vulnerable to external volatilities in energy commodity markets. Secondly, the East Coast is a very likely route of potential escape of Taiwanese residents caught in the middle of the conflict. And thirdly, since the port of Hualien opens up to the broader Pacific Ocean, it is a potential port of entry for the US or other players where they might be trying to bring troops or other support personnel to the island. So even if the preparedness is not there yet, I think that the activities near Hualien, on top of their propaganda dimension, given that this is where Bi Kim-xiao built her political
Yes,
career.
the vice president.
Exactly, that those preparations are underway.
Also might explain why in the previous drills, Guermantes, there were, the aircraft carriers which were positioned to the east. But let's go to, we've talked about PLA's or Beijing's propaganda. Let's actually take a look at an example. The People's Liberation Army released a 3D simulation animation of the exercise on Weibo. Let's take a look.
进行远距离组网建链，共享目标态势，密切战术协同，对重要目标进行联合打击，对关键要道进行夺权战控，贯穿全程开展突发情况迅即处置，有效检验提升部队随行任务的能力。
Guermantes, so Professor Chen earlier in the show mentioned that this sort of propaganda actually just backfires. It's counterproductive. But so why does Beijing continue?
They pursue both what they call the peaceful means and the non-peaceful means against Taiwan. So they want the Taiwanese to have fear and to kowtow to the CCP. And so by showing these kinds of videos, they think, much like they would treat their own people, that the Taiwanese will kowtow. Oh my gosh, there is these bombs coming, and I have to do whatever China says.
But Taiwanese are kind of numbed to it.
Whatever China has been doing so far has minimal impact on their life. And so when they show these videos, they kind of look at it as amusing because it's like a game that you play on a computer.
But is that dangerous? Is that dangerous for Taiwan?
Yes, it is. I think that the Taiwanese government and the people should be more prepared for a contingency against Taiwan. Now, I don't think they should use the propaganda coming from China to convince them that there is a problem. But I think that the Taiwanese government and the Taiwanese people should acknowledge that there's a growing problem and to deal with it. And of course, they've done some things, and they're continuing to do things. But it's my opinion that Taiwan should do more. And I think that it also demonstrates to Taiwan's allies and partners that Taiwan takes the threat seriously.
Okay. Now, Tesla has asked its supply chain to divert away from both sides of the Taiwan Strait. Europe and the US have condemned Beijing's military aggressions. Japan's Okinawa Prefecture, Yonaguni Island, Ishigaki Island and other places were put on alert, and the ground self-defense force was stationed in the area. At home, President Lai's approval rating is surging. So, Professor Chen, you did mention this earlier in the show. Looking back at what happened after the Pelosi visit, and then after the McCarthy meeting in California, what would you say are the implications for China of undertaking these sorts of moves against Taiwan?
Well, I think economy is bad in China, and they probably need some action to divert their attention away from their failing economy. So that Taiwan become a target for them to air their frustration. This exercise by the 3D very interesting motion picture try to intimidate Taiwanese people. I don't think that is going to work this time. It took out the element of surprise. Secondly, we have they are facing a problem that is the diminishing marginal utility of intimidation. I think that is a big issue for them. And I think Xi Jinping seems to haven't made up his mind whether he should use more soft hand or the hard hand. So he sort of swing in between which one he should choose. So I think by having this exercise, rather than intimidating Taiwanese people, it just shows that Xi Jinping has put himself into a dilemma. He couldn't decide what part to focus to emphasize.
Marcin, very final question. Are there any diplomatic costs to Beijing?
I believe that what we have seen during those most recent exercises is, in a way, just repetition of a pattern of intimidation that China started to build up following the visit of Nancy Pelosi to the island in 2022. Therefore,
so it doesn't really add to essentially, the costs at that time. amongst the regional players?
I don't think so. And when it comes to regional players specifically, we have actually seen players such as the Philippines distance themselves somewhat from taking a very critical stance on condemning the drills. So, for example, on the sidelines of an event that the Philippine Navy was hosting, it was a Philippine Navy anniversary event. The Secretary of Defense of the Philippines, Secretary Teodoros, said that anything that was going on in the Taiwan Strait was an internal affair, and therefore he didn't take a stance, even though President Marcos Jr. has broken the silence and congratulated Lai on his victory in January earlier this year. So I think that because these drills weren't an escalation, they were a continuation of patterns which are already in place, it shows that the trajectory of China's intimidation in the region remains the same.
Okay. Guermantes,
very quickly,
final. Yep.
I don't see the U.S. or Taiwan, trying to actively do kinds of things that are aggressive in the psychological warfare. A simple thing would be to emphasize to the Chinese people that if there is a war in the Taiwan Strait, there will be a lot of one-child fatalities going back to China, and that they should know that their one-child children are going to suffer and they're going to have no future. It's not like a military exercise that has the same kind of kinetic threat, but it's the idea that there are things that can be said against China to deter them.
Okay, so Taiwan perhaps needs to ramp up their psychological defense tactics. Okay, thank you so much, Chen Ming-chi, Guermantes Lailari and Marcin Jezewski for joining Taiwan Talks today. If you liked our show, please search for us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up and hit subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching our show today. Stay safe and see you next time.